Okay guys, so I want you to stop whatever you're doing right now and pay very close attention to what I'm about to tell you, because what I'm going to walk you through today is not a hypothesis. This is not a movie. This is the most likely direction that this conflict is heading. And depending on which scenario plays out, your life, your economy, your energy bills, your food prices will never be the same again. Today we're going to talk about 3 scenarios if the United States enters a full-scale war with Iran. Not airstrikes, not sanctions, not proxy conflict. I mean full war, boots on the ground, total commitment, okay? And we're going to use game theory to understand this, which means we're going to look at the incentives, the geography, the resources, and the weaknesses of every player involved. And by the end of this video, you will understand this conflict better than 99% of people on the planet. Alright, let's go. First, before we get to the 3 scenarios, I need you to understand one fundamental thing. Okay, this is really important. The United States and Iran are not equal opponents. And I don't mean that in the way that you think. Yes, America has the most powerful military on paper, the biggest navy, the most advanced aircraft, nuclear weapons. Okay, we know all of this. But here's what most people miss. America's military was designed for a completely different kind of war. It was built during the Cold War to flex on the Soviet Union, to look powerful, to scare people. It was never truly built to fight a guerrilla war, a drone war, a mountain war against a nation of 90 million people who have been preparing for this exact conflict for 45 years. Okay? Iran. On the other hand, this is a nation under sanctions since 1979. They have been cut off from the global economy their entire modern existence. And what did that do? It forced them to become self-sufficient, creative, and asymmetric in how they fight. Okay, asymmetric just means you fight a completely different kind of war than your enemy expects. So when I say full war, I mean America has committed, no going back. And the moment that happens, one of 3 scenarios unfolds. Let me walk you through each one. Okay, scenario number 1. This is what the Americans and Israelis are hoping for. This is the best case scenario from their perspective. And I'll tell you right now, it is the least likely. Okay? So the idea here comes from something called shock and awe military doctrine. You've seen this before in Iraq in 2003. The idea is simple. You decapitate the leadership, you destroy command and control, and the population either surrenders or revolts against their own government. The body falls when you cut off the head. Okay? In this scenario, the Americans do the following. They launch massive airstrikes on Tehran. They target military infrastructure, power grids, communication towers. They use special operations forces to eliminate the remaining leadership of the Revolutionary Guard. They squeeze the population so hard that a revolution breaks out from within. The regime collapses within weeks. A pro-Western government is installed, and the Americans declare victory. Now, why does this not work against Iran? Okay, and this is where the geography becomes really critical. Pull up a map of Iran, guys. What do you see? Mountains. Okay, the entire western and northern border of Iran is mountain ranges. The Zagros Mountains, the Alborz Mountains, these are not small hills. These are fortress walls. You cannot bomb what you cannot find. And Iran has spent decades hiding its military assets deep inside these mountains. Missile bases, drone factories, command bunkers, fuel storage. They're all underground, inside mountains, completely protected from airstrikes. So, shock and all worked in Iraq because Iraq is flat desert. There is nowhere to hide in a flat desert. But Iran is not Iraq. Okay? This is a completely different terrain and a completely different people. And here's the second reason this fails. The Iranians have already decentralized their command structure. This is really important. Every regional commander has his own orders, his own resources. his own mission. Even if you bomb Tehran into rubble, the military keeps fighting. There is no single head to cut off. So shock and awe is completely ineffective here. And yet, this is probably what the Americans try first, because this is what their military doctrine tells them to do. And that's the tragedy of it. Scenario 1 probability, low, maybe 10 to 15%. Okay, let's move on. Au revoir. Okay guys, scenario 2. This is the most dangerous scenario. This is the one that keeps strategic analysts awake at night. And honestly, this is the most likely outcome if America commits fully. In this scenario, the initial American offensive partially succeeds. They destroy a lot of infrastructure in Iran. They kill a lot of people. Maybe they even occupy parts of southern Iran, the coastal areas near the Strait of Hormuz. Okay? But here is where it goes wrong, because occupying Iran is not the same as defeating Iran. Iran has a population of 90 million people. Okay? For context, Iraq had 25 million when the Americans invaded in 2003. And look how that went. The Americans spent 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan and left with nothing to show for it. Now multiply that problem by 4 and add a population that is deeply religious, that believes in martyrdom as a sacred obligation, and that just watched their supreme leader get killed on international news. You are not pacifying this population ever. Okay, so what happens in this scenario is a full-scale insurgency, guerrilla warfare in the mountains and cities, IEDs, drone swarms targeting American convoys and bases, suicide attacks. And here's the part that most people don't talk about: proxy escalation, because Iran has proxies everywhere. Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, Shia militias in Iraq, in Syria, in Bahrain. If America is bogged down in Iran, every single one of these groups activates simultaneously. American bases across the entire Middle East are under attack every single day. The entire region is on fire. And now look at the economic consequences. The Strait of Hormuz, this tiny 33-kilometer wide waterway, is closed. Okay, 20% of the entire world's oil supply passes through this strait. China gets 40% of its oil from this region. Japan gets 75%. India depends on 60%. If this strait is closed for months, and in this scenario, it will be closed, the global economy goes into a severe recession. Oil prices triple. Inflation explodes worldwide. Stock markets crash. And the American public, who is now watching flag-draped coffins come home every week and paying $10 a gallon for gas, turns completely against this war. This is the Vietnam scenario, except it's in a region that controls the energy supply of the entire planet. This is the most likely scenario, guys. Probability about 50 to 55%. Okay, scenario 3. I want you to take a deep breath before I walk you through this one, because this is a scenario where this conflict stops being a Middle East war and becomes something that affects every single country on Earth. In this scenario, the war escalates beyond Iran and America. And here's how that happens step by step. Okay, let me walk you through the dominoes. First, Russia. Russia cannot allow Iran to fall. Okay, this is non-negotiable for Moscow. Why? Because if Iran falls to American military force, Russia is next. Iran is a critical buffer state, a critical energy partner, and a critical ally in resisting American dominance. So in this scenario, Russia begins supplying Iran with advanced air defense systems, intelligence, possibly troops disguised as advisors. Sound familiar? That's exactly what happened in Ukraine in the early stages. Second, domino, China. China is more calculated here. Okay, China's primary interest is energy and trade. And China has a massive economic relationship with Iran through the Belt and Road Initiative. If Iran collapses, China loses a critical node in its entire Eurasian strategy. So China starts putting economic pressure on America. They begin reducing their holdings of US Treasury bonds. They accelerate the development of a non-dollar oil trading system. And they quietly provide Iran with satellite intelligence and drone technology. This is economic warfare combined with indirect military support. Third domino, the nuclear question. And this is the one that nobody wants to say out loud. If Iran is losing this war, truly losing, facing regime collapse, facing dismemberment as a nation, do they reach for a nuclear weapon? And a K, Iran has always officially denied having nuclear weapons. But let's be honest about what the intelligence community actually believes. If a government believes its existence is about to end historically, nations make desperate decisions. And this is a scenario where that calculation becomes real. And if that happens, if a nuclear weapon is used anywhere in this conflict, we are in territory that humanity has never been in before. Since Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the rules of the entire world change overnight. This is scenario 3, World War. Probability, let's say 25 to 30%, and rising every week. This conflict continues. Okay guys, so let's step back and look at this from a pure game theory perspective. Because here's what's really fascinating about this conflict from an analytical standpoint. Both sides have what we call a dominant strategy that leads to mutual destruction. Okay? Iran's dominant strategy is to close the Strait of Hormuz, destroy the GCC economies, unite the Shia world into a single jihad, and collapse the petrodollar. America's dominant strategy is to use military force, decapitate the Iranian government, fracture Iran along ethnic lines, and maintain control of Middle Eastern oil. Both strategies make perfect sense from each player's individual perspective. And both strategies together lead to catastrophe for the entire world. This is what game theorists call a Nash equilibrium in a negative-sum game, where everyone plays their best move and everyone loses. The only escape from this equilibrium is negotiation. But here is the problem, and this is really important. Negotiation requires both sides to believe they are better off talking than fighting. And right now, the Iranians believe they are fighting a holy war of vengeance. And the Americans believe they are fighting for the future of their empire and the petrodollar. Neither side currently has the incentive to stop. Okay? So what does this mean for you? For the average person watching this video? It means the next 6 to 18 months are going to be extraordinarily turbulent. Energy prices will rise, global trade will be disrupted, financial markets will be volatile, and the geopolitical world order that has existed since 1945 will be fundamentally challenged. So to summarize, guys, 3 scenarios. 1, quick American victory through shock and awe. Least likely. Probably doesn't work because of Iranian geography and decentralized command. 2, a long grinding insurgency that bleeds America dry economically and militarily while the world economy suffers. Most likely, this is the Afghanistan model, but 10 times larger and 10 times more consequential. 3, full global escalation involving Russia, China, nuclear risk, and a restructuring of the entire world order. Less likely, but increasingly possible with every escalation. What I want you to take away from this video is not fear, okay? Fear is not useful. What is useful is understanding. Because when you understand the game theory, when you understand the geography, the incentives, the weaknesses of each player, you can see what's coming before it happens. And that is the most powerful thing you can have in a world that is changing this fast. If you want me to go deeper on any one of these scenarios, the economics, the nuclear question, the role of China and Russia, let me know in the comments below. Because we have a lot more to cover. And this story is far from over. Alright guys, I'll see you in the next one.
Financial markets are likely to become highly unstable, and the global geopolitical order that has existed since 1945 could face a serious and lasting disruption. To sum it up, there are 3 possible scenarios. First, a rapid U.S. victory driven by overwhelming force. This is the least likely outcome. as Iran's geography and decentralized military structure make a quick win extremely difficult. Second, a prolonged and exhausting conflict, one that drains the United States both economically and militarily, while also damaging the global economy. This is the most probable scenario. Think of Afghanistan, but on a much larger scale and with far greater global consequences. Third, full-scale global escalation involving major powers like Russia and China, bringing nuclear risks and potentially reshaping the entire world order, while less likely. This scenario becomes more realistic with each step toward escalation. The key takeaway here isn't fear. Fear doesn't help. What matters is understanding. When you understand the strategy, the geography, the motivations, and the weaknesses of each player, you gain the ability to anticipate what comes next. And in a world changing this quickly, that kind of awareness is incredibly powerful. If you want a deeper breakdown of any of these scenarios, whether it's the economic impact, nuclear risks, or the roles of China and Russia, let me know. There's still a lot more to explore, and this story is far from over.